Hey, what's up, guys? Blake. I'm the hipster that plays Highlander, the boomer, and today we're back again. We're doing the Commander Legends multicolored commanders. Next review will be for the monocolors and backgrounds, as this video would be like 4 hours if I put them all in one video. So this time we're going to talk about just the multicolored legends to get it started. Then we'll talk about the monocolor backgrounds. Then we'll get into the rest of the main set. We're going to do the main set multicolor legendaries first. Then we're going to get into the PreCon face commanders next. And then, yeah, this time we're not going to do any letter grades. This isn't a tier list. We're going to try this sort of set review this time. Yeah, don't forget to do all the algorithm stuff, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for all the noob subs and everything. Let's get into it. First card. Oh man, we're going to start off with the doozy. Alinduo the Seer. That's probably wrong, but whatever. 2 green blue for a human shaman. 3/5. You tap to draw a card, then exile a card from your hand and put a number of time counters on it equal to its mana value. It gains when the last time counter is removed from this card. If it's exiled, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. If you cast a creature spell this way, it gains haste until end of turn. Then remove a time counter from each card you own in exile. So essentially, you tap to loot, and the card that you discard, you exile instead, and it gains suspend. Notably, it doesn't actually have suspend the keyword, because the keyword suspend makes you remove the time counters on upkeep, while this card is what removes the time counters from them. So this card has to consistently stay on the board in order for you to keep putting cards into suspend and then removing the counters from the suspend in order to keep your engine going. So I don't think this card's definitely not good by any means, but it's definitely pretty cool design, pretty fun for Simic. Not normally a Simic thing. Yeah, this card's just interesting. It's not like a power card, but it will be fun for sure. I like the design of it. Next up, Baba Lysaga, Night Witch. 1 black green for a 3/3 human warlock. You tap and sack 3 permanents. And if there are 3 or more card types among the sacrificed permanents, each opponent loses 3 life, you gain 3 life, and draw 3 cards. Notably, you can sack permanents that have multiple card types, such as like a Dryad Arbor. It's a land and a creature, and that counts for 2 of your permanent types. And also you sack up to 3. So you can sack like a Dryad Arbor and then like a Mox Amber or something. And then you'll get this effect. This card's really cool. I really like the design of this card. It makes you jump through some hoops, and it's not like overpowering or game winning. It's just a cool engine card with a really unique kind of hoop to jump through. And you can just use it as just kind of a regular sack outlet. If you want to sack 3 creatures, you certainly can do that without drawing any cards or anything. If you want to like avoid like a Terminus or like an exile board wipe or something. So this card's pretty sweet. I like this card. Once again, not probably a super powerful card, but this one is cool and definitely has a little more potential than the last one. Next up, a card with little to no potential. Bane, Lord of Darkness. 1 black, white, blue for a 5/2 god. As long as your life total is less than or equal to half your starting life total, this has indestructible. There's a cycle of these. You're going to see that there's 5 of them that have this text. This is the Esper one. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, target opponent may have you draw a card. If they don't, you put a creature card with equal or lesser toughness from your hand onto the battlefield. I don't think there's anything really here to do. The right choice for your opponent is always to let you cheat in whatever it is from your hand, because you're just losing cards at that point. If you let them draw cards, then they're just going to play those other cards later and then keep fueling their engine. If you just make them put the cards from their hand into play, then they can't fuel this engine. It quickly runs out of steam. So, and this card's stats are pretty poor. Being a 5/2 is really poor stats for a commander. It dies to a lot of things, even if it is indestructible. And for 4 mana. I don't like this card at all. I think this card sucks. I don't think there's much here to do either. Next up, Baal, Lord of Murder. 2 green, black, red for a 4/4 god. This has the text of the indestructible again. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, put a 1/1 counter on target creature and goad it. This one's pretty interesting. It doesn't give you like a way to win the game or like a engine necessarily. It just facilitates a lot of goading and your opponents beating the tar out of each other. So that's cool, but I don't think there's a lot here to do, similar to the last card. But this card's definitely more interesting than the last card, but I'm not super hyped on it. Next up, Kidara, Color of the Small, 1 green white for a 3/3 trample Orc Ranger. When Kidara of the Small deals combat damage to a player, for each token you control, create a 1/1 rabbit creature token. So this will facilitate a lot of token creation. You are in green white, so you don't have the like Perforos and Impact Tremors to get a lot of ETB triggers. However, what you do have is a lot of token duplicators, like your Anointed Procession, and all that sort of stuff. So I think there's definitely something here. This doesn't scale very well is the only problem. As the game gets later, it's going to be harder for you to trigger this token generation without putting some sort of evasion. But then when you put in evasion, you start pulling away from your token strategy. So there's definitely like a tug and pull here of what this commander wants to do. It will generate you a lot of tokens fairly early on in the game. As long as you can get your tokens out there nice and early. Stay pretty low to the ground. But this card's pretty sweet, and making rabbit tokens is pretty fun. So this card's fine. I like this card. Next up, Commander Liara Porter, 3 red-white for a 5/3 human soldier. Whenever you attack, spells you cast from exile this turn cost X less to cast, where X is the number of players being attacked. Exile the top X cards of your library, until in turn you may cast those spells from among those exiled cards. Sorry. Is this a Boros attacks commander? It sure is. We got another one. This one's like fine. It's asking you to attack all 3 players, and then you get to exile the top 3 cards, and you get 3 generic discount, which isn't nothing. But 5 mana for just a 5/3 is kind of eh. The nice thing though is this isn't the thing that has to attack, so you don't have to put this in danger to get the effect. But I'm still not super enthused about this card. It's like fine. Yeah, it's fine. Definitely just kind of another Boros attacks commander. This one does technically draw you cards and helps you play them a little bit, but you do have to put in some work, and then I don't know, you're just a Boros attacks deck. It's not really that interesting to me. The Council of 4, 3 white blue, for Human Noble, 0/8. Whenever a player draws their second card during their turn, you draw a card. Whenever a player casts their second spell during their turn, you create a 2/2 white knight creature token. Card's fine. It doesn't really, once again, this is just another card that doesn't really facilitate a strategy for you. It's just kind of just a like a situational value engine. And personally, I like value engines that I can play around, things that I can help facilitate my game playing with. And I don't know. To me, that just makes a more consistent deck building and playing experience. I mean, there's a lot of players that like to have things that are a little wacky and like, not consistent and, wild and stuff like that. And maybe this card's for those players. It's not a card that excites me. I don't think it's particularly strong in any way. It's just like a fine card. Somebody will probably be happy playing it, but I think this is kind of a miss. Duke Alder Revengard, 4 red white for a 5/5 human noble soldier. At the beginning of combat on your turn, another Boros combat commander. At the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains haste and myriad until end of turn. This one's much more interesting to me than the other one. This reminds me a lot of Xenagos. So Xenagos says when you go to combat, you can give a creature +X and haste and stuff like that, and X is his power. This reminds me a lot of that. You can play a creature and immediately give it haste and myriad, which seems really sweet. This is seems like a pretty sweet Boros attacks commander. It can also like have a sub theme of tokens, since you're making a lot of tokens from myriad. I don't know. Once again, this is still just a Boros attacks commander, so this is just another one in the large sea of Boros attacks commanders. But this one is at least cool. Giving your creatures myriad is definitely very powerful, and haste is very powerful, and you get to have that effect from the command zone, which is really nice and consistent. So this one's cool. I do like this one, but not one I'm definitely going to build. Next up, Dinahair? I don't know. Invoker Adept, 1 blue, red, white, for a human wizard, 4/4 with haste. You may activate abilities of other creatures you control as long as those creatures have those creatures have haste. That's pretty cool. Tap. When you activate the next ability this turn by spending 4 more mana to activate it, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. I think one thing that's very important to note is that that last ability, usually abilities like that cost you mana also to activate. But it's all you have to do to activate that ability is just to tap. So even though that ability seems kind of narrow in terms of what you can copy with it, it does seem quite powerful because you don't have to invest any extra mana into it like you usually do with copying effects and spells and stuff like that. And the first ability of giving all your things with activated abilities tap as though they had haste is a very good ability to have in the command zone, I think, too. This card does not seem broken by any means, but it does seem pretty sweet. It seems like it has a really cool build around. I do like how many different kinds of activated abilities there are. One of my favorites is cycling. If you have any sort of cycling or channel, those are, even though you pay a cost and discard the card, it is an activated ability of the card, so you can copy those. Not that there's a ton of those that cost 4 more mana to do, but just to give you some ideas. But yeah, I think this card's pretty sweet. The design of this card's really cool. It seems really fair. I don't really see any opportunities that are really obvious to break it. And yeah, I think it's better than probably most people would anticipate at first. Glunch the Bestower, 1 green white for a jellyfish with 0/5 with flying. At the beginning of your end step, choose a player. They put 2 1/1 counters on a creature they control. Choose a second player to draw a card, then choose a third player to create 2 treasure tokens. I will say one thing, kind of leading off this card. Most people, when they see a card like this that's kind of group huggy, they immediately discount it to be like, this is for a group hug commander. It's just kind of a wacky, goofy commander. I wouldn't recommend that for when you evaluate cards like this. I've been pretty impressed with Vazzy. The card from last set that I said was really bad, but it had potential. It's a 3/3 with haste for 4 or 5, and you can tap it to give your opponents treasures based on the treasures you make. And whenever they use a treasure for an ability or spell, you get to draw a card and put a counter on something. It turns out that giving your opponents just a few treasures is totally worth it to get cards out of them. Especially since you can make deals and you say, hey, if I give you like 3 treasures, we'll use these to cast 2 different things. And like, you don't have to give them 100 treasures. You just give them a few of them. And it's not that big a deal. It helps you, it still helps you fuel your game plan, gives you things to do. It helps them cast their spells, but I mean, you're going to have more stuff to do, and you're only doing it for one opponent, so it's not like you're doing it for a ton of opponents. This one, I think, falls under a similar vein. I think this card, I don't want to say this card is good, but this card is definitely playable. And I don't think it's bad. The 2/1/1 counters, you can use that as like a bargaining chip to kind of goad that creature. Say, hey, if I give your creature some counters, will you not attack me with that creature? And then between you and another player, you're going to choose draw a card and make 2 treasures. And you're going to just choose the one that's better for you. Generally, that's probably going to be the 2 treasures, I would say. Because 2 treasures is a lot of mana to have on your next turn. And drawing a card is less likely to go bad for you than giving away 2 treasures, I would say. So I think the most important mode for you to take is probably treasures, unless you have nothing better to do and are flooded, then you can obviously draw a card. But yeah, I think this card is not discountable, if that's an appropriate word. Yeah, don't disregard this card. I think this card's cool. I think it's fine. It's not a card that I'm in a rush to build, or that I anticipate a lot of people are in a rush to build. But if you do see this across from the table, don't immediately think it's like a group hug deck or anything like that. I think this card is actually just a fine card on its own. Cool design, too. Next up, Gorian Wise Mentor. Green, white, blue for a 3/4 human wizard with vigilance. Whenever you cast an adventure spell, you may copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. Simple. I like it. We got a lot more. When I saw this card spoiled, I was pretty interested in it because I think adventures are a really cool mechanic. But the adventure cards that we had previously, there wasn't enough of them that were really playable to support this. Luckily, I think there's enough of them now with the new set that are playable that you can make an actual deck out of this. It's definitely going to be a fun deck. naturally adventure spells are pretty inefficient because you're getting 2 spells, so neither side is usually going to be like on rate per se. So that being said, I think this card is pretty sweet. Definitely fun, fair, good design here. Like this card a lot. Next up, Jansen Chaos Crafter. White, red, black for a 3/3 with haste, Gnome Artificer. You can tap and sack an artifact creature to make 2 treasure tokens. You can sacrifice a non-creature artifact to create 2 1/1 colorless construct artifact creature tokens. This card's kind of obviously stupid, right? This notably, neither of these modes say non-token, so this is just a self-fueling engine. This card seems very easy to go infinite with. All you need to do is make this itself an artifact, and then it's very easy to untap in Mardu colors with like a Clock of Omens or your Manifold Keys or your Draw Scorpions or whatever. There's like a million ways to untap this thing once you make this an artifact with like a Liquid Metal Torque or Liquid Metal Coating or something like that. So this card is, I think, pretty poor design. They definitely dropped the ball on this one. They obviously wanted this thing to say the words that it did and like self-fuel itself, but I think that's a very bad idea. I think if you just put non-token on both of these modes, then this card's still pretty cool and people will still be interested in it. But now this card's like, and it has haste too, so this card's just awful design. I don't like this at all. On its face, this card's cool, but if you sit across from this deck, you're probably not going to have a good time. You're going to get combo killed pretty quick, I think, because you're also in the colors of all the tutors, so you can just do whatever you want. Yeah. Enough said. Oh, God. John Irenicus, Shattered One. We're going to go with that. 2 blue, black. I didn't think I was bad at pronouncing names until I started doing the set review, but apparently I am. 2 blue, black for a 3/3 elf wizard. It doesn't really look like an elf, but okay. Looks like a zombie or horror or something. I don't know. At the beginning of your end step, target opponent gains control of up to 1 target creature you control. Put 2 1/1 counters on it and tap it. It's goaded for the rest of the game and gains this creature can't be sacrificed. Whenever a creature you own but don't control attacks, you draw a card. This card's sweet. I think this card's actually pretty good too. Because the most important thing on this whole card to me is this creature can't be sacrificed clause. So you can pretty freely give these out, your creatures out, without having to, like worry about giving them resources that they can take advantage of. If they can't sack it for effects, it makes them much harder to actually just throw it away without spending like their own card on it or something. And then once you give it to them, they don't really have much reason to destroy it with their own card, you know what I mean? So, because it's not going to hurt them in anything. The only thing it's going to do is just draw you cards and help kill your opponents. But yeah, I think this card's sweet. The card that you give away kind of has pseudo haste because you give it away on your turn. And then on their turn, they untap with it, meaning that it can attack. So if you play a creature and then immediately give it away, it kind of has haste. It can attack immediately on their turn. And the whenever a creature you own but don't control attacks, draw a card is really nice. It'll help you get your card back almost immediately. So yeah, I don't think this card's broken or anything, but it does actually seem pretty decent. And it has the right words on it that are fair and good design. So I like this card a lot. I think this card is sweet. Next up, Kaga, Shadow Archdruid. 2 black green for a 1/4 elf druid. Whenever a Kaga Shadow Archdruid attacks, it gains Death Touch until end of turn. Mill 2 cards. Once during each of your turns, you may play a land or cast a permanent spell from among cards in your graveyard that were put there from your library this turn. This card's really sweet. I like this card. It's very fair, but it does give you some value, but it only has a limited amount of value. You can only do the thing once. But it helps kind of fuel it by milling you 2 cards, so it gives you things to do while also getting Death Touch. So it does have to put itself at risk in order to facilitate its own effect. But you can facilitate its own effect. But you also have a build around aspect here, where if you have things like Buried Alive or Entomb, where you can search things up from your deck, put them in your graveyard, or any sort of myriad effects, dredge, things like that. They give you lots of opportunities, lots of kind of levers to pull here to do this effect. But the effect is very fair. You're paying 4 mana for this creature. This card is excellent design. It's well balanced. It does cool things. It's all really fair. Yeah, this card's great. I love this card. Next up, Corlessa Scale Stinger. Green-blue for a 1/4 Dragon Bard. You look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast dragon spells from among the top card of your library. Simic Dragons is not something I anticipate seeing, even with some more Simic Dragon support like this guy. So I think this is mostly a 99 card. However, I think I might try this as a commander in my tribal deck. I currently have a blue-green tribal deck where I play Morat of the Frost, which is the clone with Changeling, as my commander. And I was originally kind of split between clones and changelings. So I was mostly running clones and then kind of leaned into changelings. But now I'm kind of switching to almost all changelings and not very many clones. And I think for that build that I'm running, where it's almost all changelings, that this might be a better commander than Morat compared to the clone version of the deck. That being said, I've noticed that the clone version of the deck has performed much better than the changeling side of the deck. But the changeling side of the deck is more quirky and fun. So this seems like a fine commander for that deck of mine. But I don't anticipate this card seeing really any play outside of 99s. Mahati, Emporium Master. 1 black-red for a 3/3 Cat Devil. At the beginning of your end step, create a treasure token for each creature that died this turn. Notably, it's not just your creatures, it's your opponent's creatures. But it does trigger on your turn. So you're the one that has to kill all the things on your turn. And then when you go to your end step, you get the treasures, so you can't really even use them immediately. This card's just a 99 card, I guess. But even then, I don't think it's probably going to be that great of a 99 card. I think this design is a little too fair. I like what it's doing. But yeah, I think it's just a little too fair. I do like how it's kind of fixed. What was that dragon called? The dragon that's Smaug, basically. It's the 3-mana 5/4 flyer that gets you a treasure on your end step for each creature you control that died this turn. It's going to bother me that I can't think of it. But this is basically that, but fixed, because it counts your opponent's creatures. Just counting your own creatures on that card was not very good. But being able to count at least every creature is much better, but it is only on your turn still like that card. So this card's a bit too fair, but it is cool. I like what they were trying to do here. I will say I'm glad that they took the safe route on this one, because if this card was obscene, it would be very obnoxious. Next up, Mazzy Truesword Paladin. 1 red, green, white for a 3/4 halfling knight. Whenever an enchanted creature attacks one of your opponents, it gets +2/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. Notably, it says one of your opponents, so for each opponent that you attack, you get that effect. Whenever an aura you control is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, exile it till end of turn. Until your end of your next turn, you may cast that card. That's nice. So this kind of encourages you to play an aura deck and an attacks deck in Naya. That's cool. Celestia is the Enchantress color, so that encourages the aura side of it, and red and green is kind of like an attacky color, so that encourages the attack side of it. This card seems nice. I like what this card is doing. Seems really fair. This card's definitely not like super powerful or anything, but you can definitely do some cool stuff with this card. Good design here. Miriams, Sentinel Worm. 3 green, blue, red for a 6/6 Dragon Spirit with flying and ward 2. Whenever another non-token dragon enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of it, except the token isn't legendary if the dragon is legendary. Spoiler alert, I hate this card. Anything that makes non-legendary copies of legendary stuff, I think is really awful design. You basically are taking the balancing mechanic that you put in the game and subverting it into nothing. The way I see it is that Wizards is doing it to help sell products and help, subvert the Commander format rules, because, it's the most popular format now. They're trying to sell products for it. I'm going to try not to rant about this too long, I promise. So they want you to be able to put cool cards in your command zone, but they also want to allow you to play whatever you want, basically. So all your legendary dragons, you just get 2 of them. Who cares, right? This card is just awful design. Like, I don't think we need this card. I I think this card is good enough for you to drop from a 5-color dragon deck to a 3-color dragon deck if you wanted to. You certainly don't have to. You can just throw this in your dragon deck or whatever. But I think this card is good enough to pull people to play dragons, because play this as a commander. All that being said, because most dragons are in red anyway. I mean, I guess there are some cool dragons in like the other colors and stuff, but most of your dragons are in like red. And then you have some Gruul dragons and some Rakdos dragons. The Rakdos dragons you won't be able to play, but the cool Gruul dragons you will. So anyway, this card will allow you to play most of the dragons. The effect is insanely powerful and very obnoxious. And it's an ETB, so even if you like bring back a dragon from the graveyard, which you're not super likely to do, seeing that you're not in black. But that being said, if you like flicker a dragon or whatever, you're gonna make more token copies of it. So yeah, I hate this card. All these designs are awful. This one's awful in terms of design. But yeah, I am not looking forward to seeing this card. Next, Minsk and Boo, Timeless Heroes. 2 red-green for a planeswalker. It can be your commander. That's why we're talking about it. It has 3 loyalty and an absolute block of text. So let's get started. When Minsk and Boo, Timeless Heroes, enters the battlefield, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you create a Boo token, which is a 1/1 red hamster with trample and haste. So you do that on your upkeep, and when this enters the battlefield. Okay. +1, you put 3 1/1 counters on up to 1 target creature with trample or haste. Put 3 1/1 counters on up to 1 target creature with trample or haste. Okay, so you can only put the counters on something that has trample or haste. Okay. -2, sacrifice a creature. When you do, Minsk and Boo, Timeless Heroes deals X damage to any target or accesses that creature's power. The sacrificed creature was a hamster. You draw X cards. This card seems pretty good, actually. It's going to come in, make a 4/4 immediately, basically, because you're going to make the Boo plus it and, make it a 4/4. And then even if your Boo dies from like blocking or whatever during the turn cycle, on your upkeep you get a new one. So you can plus it again, or you can sacrifice the Boo to draw a card if you really need to. But if you make the 4/4 Boo and then you get to untap with this, you're like kind of living the dream, right? Because then you get to throw the Boo at somebody and deal 4 damage to something and draw 4 cards, which seems pretty sick. I think this card's pretty good, just straight up. It doesn't seem like a lot, but I think this card's pretty good. You can also just put the 1/1 counters on just whatever you have lying around with trample or haste. If you need to push through some damage or whatever, it doesn't have to be on the Boo. You can just use the Boo's chump blocking and then pump your other idiots. So yeah, I think this card's good. It's definitely pretty fair. Yeah. I don't really like planeswalkers in Commander, but this one's pretty decent, and you get to put it in your command zone, so you always have access to it. So I think this one's fine. Minthara, Merciless Soul, 2 white-black for a 2/2 elf cleric. Ward X, where X is the number of experience counters you have. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, you get an experience counter. Creatures you control get +1/+0 for each experience counter you have. Do not sleep on this card. I think this card is actually quite good. It's very easy to trigger the experience clause. It's very fair. You only get 1 experience per turn, unlike a lot of the old experience cards that were really obnoxious. But even still, the Ward X is kind of a big deal here for me, because you're going to start building up your experience counters, and then as you build them up, if they spend a ton of mana to kill this by paying the ward and everything, then when you recast it still has that Ward X, because you still have those experience tokens from before. So they still have to have another removal spell that they're willing to spend a ton of mana on. And this card's pretty innocuous, so I don't anticipate this card's like paints a big bullseye on its head or anything. But yeah, you will build up your army really quick. Giving yourself a permanent anthem that people can't really interact with will build up slowly and be very powerful as it builds up for any sort of go wide deck, which I would say Orzhov is pretty good at going wide. So yeah, don't sleep on this card. I think this card's actually pretty good. I think it's a pretty cool design. I like what it's doing. This is one of the better ways I've seen to do experience without making it bad. So yeah, I like this card a lot. Okay, so that's the end of the regular legends. So we're gonna pull up the Hold on. There we go. I don't know why the slideshow just died. Sorry about that. Alright, so we got Nero, Wild Mage. 4 blue-red for a 2/7 Human Elf Shaman. Whenever you cast a spell, you may put it on the bottom of its owner's library. If you do, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-land card. You may cast it without paying its mana cost, then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This ability only triggers once each turn. This card's kind of like a weird possibility storm, just for you, that only triggers once a turn. This card's really interesting. The one thing I don't like about this card is that it just, whenever you hit your next non-land, you just get to play it. You can't, like, do possibility storm stuff where you cast an enchantment because you want to get an enchantment or something like that. If you cast an enchantment, you're just going to get whatever the next non-land card is that you get. So I think that's kind of a bummer. That being said, this card's pretty fun. This card seems pretty hard to break. I don't think it's really breakable. But it's got a good stat line. A 2/7 is like pretty hard to kill. So if I'm investing 6 mana for this thing, I want it to have a ton of toughness, which this does. This card's definitely not good, but it is cool. And I do like it. Next up, Nine Fingers Keen. 1 blue, black, green for a 4/4 human rogue with menace. Ward, paid 9 life. Whew, that's a lot of life. When Nine Fingers Keen deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 9 cards of your library. You may put a gate card from among them onto the battlefield. Then if you control 9 or more gates, put the rest into your hand. Otherwise, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Okay, so I love this card because it makes the Golos crybabies have a not excuse for not having a gates commander anymore. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, this card is pretty cool. It's a cool gates commander. They've made a lot more gates in the new set to make gates better, as well as so that way you can meet the 9 gate criteria with this card, because before you only had access to like 4 gates. But now, if by my count, I think it was 11 gates that you can play in this deck. So you have a few extra in case one gets blown up or whatever. Yeah, I think this card's pretty sweet. Definitely a fair card. You have to deal combat damage to trigger the effect. It has menace to help it get in there. It does have wards, so it's not just going to straight up die. Your opponents have to pay a pretty hefty cost of 9 life. And Commander paying life is not a big deal, but 9 that's starting to matter a little bit. Look at the top 9 cards of your library to find a gate. Honestly, even if you have all 11 gates in, I don't know what the percentage is, but I would say you're probably still likely, or it's still very possible for you to miss on that, which is going to feel pretty bad. But the payoff is pretty sweet. Having 9 or more gates, so you don't even have to have every gate in your deck on the battlefield to draw 9 when it hits. This card's cool. I don't think this card's particularly good, but it is fun. The payoff's cool. It allows you to build around a unique archetype. I think it's a good design. Next up, OG Exquisite Blade. 2 blue-white for a 2/3 human monk. When OG the Exquisite Blade enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life and scry 2. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, exile up to 1 target creature you control, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control. This one's mostly for limited for the blue-white flicker deck. That being said, this card is pretty cool. You'd probably just put this in a flicker deck. There's just way better flicker commanders. But if you did want to build this as your flicker commander, it's definitely got good payoff. This card itself is a decent flicker target. Gaining you 2 life and scrying 2 isn't nothing. And whenever you cast your second spell, you get to flicker something if you want to. That's pretty nice. But yeah, the effect, we just have pretty insane flicker commanders that choose from, even in these colors. So I don't anticipate seeing this card a lot as the commander. But you certainly could on like a budget build or something like that if you wanted to do like a popper commander challenger, whatever, I don't know. But yeah, this card's cool. Nothing wrong with this card. Just a little on the weaker side compared to other options. Ragadraga Gorgut's Boss. What a name. 2 red-green for a 4/4 human boar. Each creature you control with a mana ability gets +2/+2. Whenever a creature you control with a mana ability attacks, untap it. Whenever you cast a spell, if at least 7 mana was spent to cast it, untap target creature. It gains +7/+7 and gains trample until end of turn. Wow. This card does a lot of different things. It makes your mana dorks big. It wants you to attack with your mana dorks because you don't lose the mana from them essentially for attacking because they get untapped. And whenever you cast a big spell, it makes one of your dudes big and gives them trample. Is pretty nice. This card's cool. I don't really think we needed this. I don't think we needed like a way to pay off mana dorks, right? Like mana dorks are already just good in Commander. I think they kind of get slept on a bit because they died on board wipes, but like they just ramp you way earlier than you're supposed to. And they count towards as creatures. So if you have like Beast Whisperers and stuff, then you draw cards when you cast them later on too. Rather than like a rampant growth where you're getting a land, sure, but unless you have something that cares about a land entering, which usually costs a lot more mana, then yeah. So I think mana dorks are kind of slept on, so I don't think we needed this. I don't think we needed people to have more of a reason to play mana dorks, but I don't know. Whatever. This card's like pretty good, but seems fine in terms of design. It doesn't really seem OP or anything, but this card will be pretty annoying to play against for sure. Raphael, Fiendish Savior. 3 black red for a 4/4 Devil Noble. It has flying. Other demons, devils, imps, and tieflings you control get +1/+1 lifelink. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature was put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, create a 1/1 red devil token with when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. This card's quite a good Lord commander for the small devils. Yeah, I guess, well, it's not even small. It works for, like, big demons, too. Yeah, this is a pretty good commander for this, like, pseudo-tribe. And the effect of triggering at each end step for a creature put into your graveyard from anywhere is pretty powerful. It doesn't say non-token as well. So if, like, a previous devil token you made from this ability dies during somebody else's turn, you just get a new devil, which is pretty good. So, yeah, this card's pretty sweet. It's definitely not overpowered or anything. Just a really, really good Lord. For 5 mana, it probably should be too, so I don't see anything wrong with this card. Rilsa Rail Kingpin. 3 blue-black for a 2/5 human rogue with Death Touch. When it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature you control against Death Touch until end of turn. If you've completed a dungeon, that creature also gets +5/+0 and gains first strike and menace until end of turn. This is mostly a limited card. Because the initiative is kind of a big deal, it seems, in draft and limited. That being said, the initiative, we haven't talked about it yet. It's just a new dungeon that you go into, and the initiative kind of works like the Monarch, where when you, it's like an emblem that you get basically, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, or when you become, or when you gain the initiative, you get to venture into the Undercity, which is a new dungeon. It's probably the best dungeon out of the other, compared to the other 3 that we previously had. But the only way you can venture into it's through the initiative. All that being said, the initiative is pretty sweet. It's a cool mechanic. I like it. But I don't think this card is going to be seen as a commander much. But if you have completed the dungeon, the thing that you give the buff to is impossible to block because it has +5/+0 first strike, menace, and death touch. Like, yeah. I think it can just never be blocked. It'll just kill everything. So, yeah. This card's just mostly for limited. Tasha, the Witch Queen. 3 blue-black for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. It can be your commander. Whenever you cast a spell you don't own, you create a 3/3 black demon creature token. That's just a passive it has. +1, draw a card. For each opponent, exile up to 1 target instant or sorcery from that player's graveyard and put a page counter on it. -3, you may cast a spell from among the cards in exile with page counters on them without paying its mana cost. This card's like fine. I think it's kind of cool design for a Planeswalker commander. You get 3/3s from doing the first effect, so if you kind of help facilitate the first effect before, without this card's own ability, you get some blockers for it. So it asks a little bit of work of you, because the second ability you can't use until you've used the first ability. That being said, if you excuse me, if you use the first ability and you exile a thing from each opponent's graveyard and then this dies, the next time this comes out you can -3 immediately because you have 3 things sitting in exile with page counters on them. So that's kind of nice. Yeah, I think this card's very fair. Cool card. I don't see anything wrong with it. Fine design. Next up, Thoros the Butcher. 3 red-green for a 3/4 with trample. Dragon Peasant. When Thoros the Butcher attacks, double the power of each dragon you control until end of turn. So when this attacks, it becomes a 6/4. Any of the dragons you control get double 2. This card seems quite good in the blue, red, green. Yeah, blue, red, green dragon commander we were talking about earlier, the one that doubles things and doesn't care about legendaries, because then you get 2 of these and then you can swing in for an insane attack. But that's just because it's doing its stupid mechanic where it ignores the legend rule. I promise I won't keep bringing that up. If it's not obvious, I do not like that effect. Yeah, this card's fine. Definitely not the best dragon by any means, but it's playable. You're definitely not going to see this in the command zone, though. Next up, Zevlor. Ilitural Exile. I don't know. That's my best guess. 1 blue, black, red for a 4/2 Tiefling Warrior with haste. Pay 2 tap and a block of text. When you next cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a single opponent or a single permanent an opponent controls this turn, for each opponent, you may choose that player permanent they control. Copy that spell. That copy targets the chosen player permanent. Okay. Basically, if you target something your opponents have or your opponent themselves, you get it. Your spell kind of has myriad. It gets to target each of you. You get one that targets your other opponents too. So if I cast a Doom Blade on one of my opponent's creatures and I copy it with this ability, I get a Doom Blade, 2 other creatures, 1 from each of my other opponents. The best way I can describe it is it gives your spell myriad. This card is fine. This card is very similar to... This card reminds me a lot of Hinata, the one that reduces the spells you cast by the amount of targets it has. In that this card is like, you have to kill this thing the turn it comes down. Like, this is a kill on sight sort of commander, because it's not guaranteed that you'll lose the turn that they untap with this. But it seems pretty likely that they'll be in a pretty insane position from the effect. It's really important that they added the 2 mana to this tap ability, because if this was just tap like that other commander we were talking about earlier that duplicates triggers, then like this would be like Hinata levels of annoyance and cringe. But because this 2 mana ability, the 2 mana extra that you pay on this ability, even if they do untap with this 1 turn, you may have not completely lost the game. With Hinata, if they ever untap with Hinata, the game is actually over, because they will wipe everything off the board. They'll just do insane nonsense. So yeah, that being said, I think this card is like, I would recommend you kill this thing on sight when you see it. It's also pretty easy to kill because it's just a 4/2. But yeah, this card is like fine. I don't really like this design particularly, but like, I don't know, some people will like it. And I don't really see anything wrong with it just because it has this extra mana ability here. Next up, Astarian, the Descendant. 4 white black for a 4/4 vampire elf rogue. Okay. Death touch lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, choose 1. Feed. Target opponent loses life equals to the amount of life they've lost this turn. Friends, you gain life equals to the amount of life you've gained this turn. Cool effect. It's got good keywords on it to help facilitate both of its other abilities. Death touch to your opponents don't want to block. Lifelink so that way you gain life to help facilitate the double life gain. This card's very fair. 6 mana for this card. This card almost certainly could have cost 1 or 2 less mana and been fine. But they priced this one very inefficiently. So there's definitely nothing that can go wrong with this, I would say, as far as like, combos or anything like that. Cool effects, though. Wound Reflection's a nice effect. And then doubling your life gain that you've gained for the turn is a nice effect. So this card's fair. Cool card. Like the design of it. Elminster. I think this is our last Planeswalker as a commander. 3 blue-white for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. It can be your commander. Whenever you scry... This is just the passive ability it has. Whenever you scry, the next instant or sorcery spell you cast this turn costs X less to cast, where X is the number of cards you looked at while scrying this way. +2, draw a card, then scry 2. -3, exile the top card of your library. Create a number of 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature tokens with flying to the card's mana value. Excuse me. This card seems kind of annoying. It immediately is going to discount the next spell you cast by 2 when you plus it. But like I don't know. This card seems like it's breakable, but it's at least like interesting. And I don't know. Maybe it's not breakable because it just says the next spell you cast. There's probably something you can do with this to make it insane, but on its surface, this card seems fine. One thing that is kind of annoying about the -3 is that normally when you exile a card with this effect, it usually means that you get to play it, but this one doesn't let you play the card. It just says you exile the top card of your library, and then based on its mana value, you make 1/1s. So that card's just gone forever. But it is cool that you can kind of set it up with your scries and then make a ton of 1/1 flyers, which is not a bad effect by any means. But it is annoying that this comes down and immediately goes to 7 loyalty. But this card is like fine. I don't really see exactly how you could make this broken, but there probably is a way. But even then, it's like whatever. Yeah, this card seems fine. It's not really a card that excites me, but I guess if you're into like Scry Tribal or whatever, then like go nuts. But yeah, seems whatever. Next up, Lowe's Hand, Dragon's Legacy. 3 blue-red for a 4/2 Dragon Shaman. Has flying. Whenever you cast an adventure spell or a dragon spell, this deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to any target that isn't a commander. That's a pretty good chunk of damage that you're going to get whenever you cast your dragon spells. I don't particularly see this as a commander. Mostly because of the last rider text where it says you can't target other commanders. For me, if I want this as a commander, or even in decks, I really want to be able to blow up people's commanders with it, because that's the most important card in their deck, probably. And until you get to like high power, obviously. So I would really like to be able to interact with that on my 5 mana spell. That being said, I know why they didn't do it. It was for limited, because this is an uncommon, and they didn't want you to like machine gun everybody's commanders over and over in the draft format. So they obviously intended this for draft and not so much commander, but it is at least an interesting card. It could probably go in the blue, red, green dragons deck or whatever. Ooh, one of the coolest cards in the set, Merkle, Lord of Bones. 4 white, black, green for a 7/5 god. This has the indestructible text of when your life is half your starting life, it's indestructible. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may exile. If you do, you create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's an enchantment and loses all other types. Wow, that is such a weird line of text, but it's so cool. So this is great for... you can build this as an Enchantress deck. When your Enchantresses die, they just turn into Enchantresses' presences, basically. You can use this as like a ETB sort of thing. My Rex Sage dies, I bring it back, I get to blow up your thing. It just sits there as an enchantment, but at least I got to blow up another thing for free. Yeah, this card's just so cool and interesting. You can put your aristocrats as enchantments. The sky's the limit on this card. What's important with this card is how this card works is it checks when the creature dies what it was. So if you had like, if you turn like an artifact, let's say a Mishra's Bauble. You turn a Mishra's Bauble into like a creature, and then it died. This ability would trigger because it sees when it dies what it is. It sees it as a creature, and then it'll bring back into play as an enchantment with the same effect. So you could still use the Mishra's Bauble thing, but it just won't be a creature anymore. It'll be an enchantment instead of an artifact. So that's a cool thing. I'll let that kind of simmer in your brain and help give you ideas. But yeah, this card is so cool, so interesting. I love playing Abzan, so this is almost certainly going to be a card I play at some point. But yeah, the sky's the limit on this one. It's crazy. So many effects that you can do. It's 7 mana, so it's basically impossible to to be broken when a commander's this much mana. So I love big mana commanders too. They just, yeah, I don't know. They just seem so fun to me. So this card's just awesome. All right, so now we're moving on to the last few commanders. These are the pre-con face commanders, so I'm sure you've seen these around, but I'll talk about them briefly. First up, we got Faldhorn, Dread Wolf Herald. 1 red-green for a 3/3 human druid. Whenever you cast a spell from exile or a land enters the battlefield under your control from exile, you create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. Pay 1, tap, discard a card. Exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. This is just like Prosper Jr. This is like fixed Prosper, right? It has the same sort of effect as Prosper, but you get wolves instead of treasures, which is probably worse in my opinion. But this at least, and this also has the ability of, being able to get you a card per turn by discarding a card. But this card is just like significantly downgraded Prosper, right? You get worse tokens and wolves instead of treasure, and it doesn't do the effect already on its own. Prosper does it at the end step, and you can play it during your next turn. This one you have to do it. You have to untap with this because you have to tap this for the ability, and you have to actually discard a card from your hand to get another card. It does cost one less mana than Prosper, but this is just leaps and bounds worse than Prosper. That being said, obviously Commander is not an entire format around just playing the best thing that you can possibly play. So, this card's interesting, I guess. I hate this design. I hate Prosper's design, so obviously I don't like this design. Being a more fair Prosper is cool, but it's still a Prosper, so I still am just not interested in this card. Red-green exile is like an interesting idea, but when we get to the backgrounds and monocolor commanders, I'll give you a suggestion of what a more interesting idea to me is than playing this that gives you the same archetype. I don't like this card, but I can see why people do because it's good. It's very good. Next up, Captain Dude. 3 blue black for a horror pirate, 3/6. Horrors you control have menace, so it includes itself. Whenever a horror you control deals combat damage to a player, that player mills that many cards. Beginning of your end step, choose a target artifact or creature card in an opponent's graveyard that was put there from their library this turn. Put it onto the battlefield under your control. Okay, this card's cool. The mill actually matters quite a bit for this. Because if you hit a good creature, you just get it and keep it, which is pretty sweet. Even if you want to add some extra mill in the deck, so in case your horrors can't get in for attacks or anything, that you can still get value, then this is a pretty cool build around in that aspect too. I like this card. I'm not a big tribal player, obviously. I've probably talked about that a few times before. But this card's pretty interesting. Horrors is not really a tribe that's gotten... It's slowly being a more and more support, especially the last few years. They've been pushing horrors a lot. They really wanted this to be a deck you could play and upgrade, obviously. But yeah, I think giving them menace, making them mill, and then you get your value based on the mill, which is kind of random. But if you are consistently getting in there with your creatures, you will consistently get value. So it asks you to attack with your army of horrors. So yep, this card's cool. I like the design of it. 5 mana is a really balanced mana value too. Good stats on it. Now we get the blue-red commander. Furcrag, Cunning Instigator. 3 blue-red for a 3/3 flying haste. Whenever one or more dragons you control attack an opponent, goad target creature that player controls. This is going to immediately goad something since it has haste. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, if that creature had to attack this turn, you may put a 1/1 counter on this and draw a card. Okay, so this card doesn't really give you a good way to win the game. Because Goad's pretty good at getting you down to a 1v1, I would say. But after that, then your opponent just attacks you because you're the only player, and Goad doesn't stop them from doing that. And this card asks you to play the other Goad cards and cards that make your opponents attack. And once you do that, you're going to draw a ton of cards with this. Because all your opponent's things... Because it just whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents. It's not like whenever one or more. It just says one. So every creature that hits your opponents that was forced to attack, you're going to draw a card. So yeah, once this thing gets going, which it can kind of help itself get going since it has haste, this thing's going to draw you a ton of cards. But it doesn't really give you a good way to win the game on it. This thing just getting bigger and bigger is like fine, but like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like this does not seem like a reliable win condition to me. But the card draw does seem like a reliable card draw to me. So, yeah, I think this card's pretty cool design. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It asks you to play goad cards, which people really like, and forced combat cards, which people really like. And it helps keep the game moving. So even if you're not going to be the one that wins the game, then, at least this, will help the game keep moving, which, yeah. So that's cool. I like this card. This card's kind of hard to figure out exactly what to do with. But yeah, cool design. Then lastly, we have Nalia Darnis, 1 white-black for a 3/3 human rogue. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast cleric, rogue, warrior, and wizard spells from the top of your library, so party creatures. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you have a full party, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Those creatures gain death touch until end of turn. I'm glad that they did give some support to party, because I think party is a pretty cool mechanic. White-black definitely seems to be the best density of the different types that you can get for party. So I like that they chose white-black for the party deck. Rogues, clerics, warriors are running around all over the place in white and black. Wizards are the only ones that you have to reach for a little bit, but there's still plenty of black wizards and stuff like that. So yeah, I like that they're giving party more support. I think it's a cool mechanic. I think it just needs like a good or powerful commander to help kind of helm it. But since we've had more sets now with party being in the mind of wizards, we've gotten a lot more random rogues, warriors, clerics, wizards on just creatures. So just random good creatures that you'd want to play anywhere. A ton of them have these random types on. So you just have to find the balance and which ones you want to play and such. All that being said, once again, this is another commander that falls a little short for me. Being able to play them off the top of your deck is cool, but the extra payoff of giving them +1 counters and death touch is not really that good. It's like fine, because you only get to do it once a turn anyway. So for me, the secondary commander and background would be a better fit for this deck. We'll talk about them next video, obviously. But yep, I'm glad that they gave this more support, but this card just doesn't quite get there for me. That being said, that's the end of the video. Try to move through it pretty quick. Wanted to give at least my opinions on everything without going like, over the 2-hour mark or everything. Anything, I got plenty of time. It's going to be in the next videos. So yeah, we'll try to keep this one short. Once again, thanks all for the new subs. Thanks for coming and hanging out and listening to me. Do the algorithm stuff, like, comment, subscribe, check out another video, all that good stuff. So cheers, y'all. Have a great day.